Does the mic work okay, or is it such a small room? Is this okay? Can you all hear me? If I just speak?
Yeah.
It's okay? Here, why don't you speak? I think that's okay. It's sort of reverberating the wrong way when I'm sitting in the audience. I really appreciate your time tonight. I sometimes think I don't know what to say anymore. I mean, what do we say at these meetings, right? What do we say to people as our economy, as our people, as the morals of our country just sort of just go away very quickly? You know, I was thinking about this presidential race. The 17, now 16 Republicans running, several Democrats running. And I was just thinking about the vastly different opinions that even within the Republican Party that people have. And I started thinking about, and I've watched, maybe you haven't watched, I've been at several presidential libraries, but I've been to Kennedy's presidential library. And if you get a chance, it'd be interesting to go watch Kennedy versus Nixon in 1960. It's not that long ago. I mean, 1960 is, 55 years ago, but it's not that long ago. It's not Andrew Jackson.
I voted for Kennedy.
Yeah, so it's not that long. So when you think about the differences between Kennedy and Nixon, were they both pro-life? Was it an argument about pro-life?
No.
You think of someone like the John F. Kennedy, or before Teddy, killed someone and shot Twitter. They were all pro-life. Think anybody was for homosexual marriage in the debate? Was that a question? I didn't see it being asked.
Those were queers off to the side.
You think about national defense. Was Nixon for a weak national defense? Was Kennedy for the man who started the Bay of Pigs? The Cuban Missile Crisis? Was he for a weak national defense? No. I mean, so think about today. Think about today where we are in our own party. I've been a registered Republican for, I don't know, 30 some odd years, right? I mean, think about the difference in the 17 candidates. I mean, you've got, just take Mike Huckabee, take Donald Trump. Their opinions on Social Security, on Medicare and Medicaid is, don't worry, they're fully funded, everything's okay, don't worry about it, we're just going to keep doing it. Social Security is $30 trillion a day. Social Security is, all you have to do is, it's like table 7 of the federal documents on Social Security every year. It's like 32% underfunded. And so the people that we refer to as the greatest generation, and I'm sorry if some of you in the room, are really turning out to be the worst generation. Nobody in their right mind would leave a country like this to these children, of which I have 6, and 2 I brought along with me. Nobody would do this. No one did do this, by the way. Nobody did do this. The guy who just dropped out of the presidential race, who I had a nice chat with about 20 minutes with a year ago as I introduced him, Governor Perry of Texas, was talking about making serious cuts to Social Security. His message did not resonate at all with the American people or the Republican Party. He's a very successful governor of probably the best performing state in the last 12 years in the United States of America. He's not a dunce. He served our country, flew transport planes. He was a lieutenant colonel. Was he a career politician? Yeah. I mean, I must say, he was a very enjoyable guy that I got a chance to spend some time with. He's going nowhere. Zippo. So there's 17 candidates for president, and Rand Paul on national defense is over here, and the toughest guy that we have on national defense. I mean, Mr. Trump is talking about he'll be tougher than anybody. So a very different guy to debate, I imagine, right? If I'm going to build a wall to separate us from Mexico 10 feet tall, Laffey. What's he talking about? I'm building 20 feet tall, right? That's the debate strategy. If I'm going to balance the budget, Laffey's going to balance the budget. I'm going to run big surpluses. Never tell you how. So it's a very difficult guy to go up against in some respects. It's just a double down theory. No matter what you say, I double down. But think about it. Chris Christie going nowhere in the polls, thankfully, in my opinion. New Jersey's a basket case. Always has been, always will be, it looks like. And he has a program for Social Security, reminds you of 1983, the Greenspan Commission. We're going to raise taxes on people who made a lot of money. We're going to make people retire 1 month later every 5 years until finally we get to the point where it's in balance, and then it will be, et cetera, et cetera. Back in 1983, by the way, the Greenspan Commission, backing of both Democrats and Republicans, made some changes to Social Security. It was never going to be touched again. Just one bald-faced lie. But Rand Paul is here, you know, so we go on every issue. And I think the problem is actually bigger, and I want to talk to you about it. Because I wanted, you know, before I leave tonight, I'd like to report upon you a couple of solutions, and maybe, you know, where we need to go. So, to take national defense, for example, and I'll get into the budget. So, again, in the news today, there really isn't much. By the way, everything's okay in the Ukraine, right? Not in the news. The news cycle by our media is like the hula hoop, right? Every 6 or 7 years, something comes back. The VA is just as bad as it was a year ago. When I was campaigning with Mr. Buck, Congressman Buck, on the campaign trail, it was all holy hell was breaking loose. And everybody was going to fix it. Congressman Kaufman, a Republican, he was going to fix it. I saw him at a speech at a Lincoln Day dinner as a Republican. He's on the committee. He got a promotion on the committee. He's going to fix it. A year later, it is worse. It is absolutely worse, out of control for our veterans. It's a disgrace. I drive down literally every other day by the Veterans Administration building that they built, the Veterans Hospital, for a very bad reason, for my very sick daughter. I drive by that thing, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. I can't even believe the way the building looks. Who thought of a building that seems to be interconnected? Has anybody seen this, by the way? Why wouldn't it be just one big building? Aren't sick, elderly veterans going into it? How are they going to get from one of these places to the next? Why is the traffic out in front the worst traffic in all of Denver? Did they plan to make it that way so the veterans can't even get there? And so, I mean, to get to the Veterans Administration, it's really simple. I've been saying this for like 7 years. But Republicans will never do it. Democrats will never do it because they will ultimately lose power. All we have to do for the $158 billion Veterans Division, by the way, you just heard a number. Have you heard a number on the campaign trail? Does anybody say numbers? Are numbers important anymore? Is it important what the debt is? Is it important what our unfunded liabilities is? Is it important? Does anybody running for president have any idea what's in the budget? Does anybody know what we're spending on Social Security? And by the way, we're spending $958 billion this year on Social Security, roughly. You would think that it would be the first question in every debate. Mr. Paul, Governor of New Jersey, Ms. Sperino, what are you going to do about Social Security? Because I'm a businessman. It comes down to that's the business, right? Don't you go and visit to the largest line item and try to solve that problem first? Do you deal with the item down here? Do you deal with the guy bringing in the extra fruit first? Or do you look at the FICA lines, the employment lines in your businesses? The trading losses. I helped run an investment banking firm. We look at the trading numbers first. It's unbelievable what's going on in this country, and we're allowing it to happen. So the veteran, just to solve one problem for you all here tonight, wouldn't it be better if we pulled out my Blue Cross Anthem card and we gave it to every veteran? And we closed down every one of these ridiculous buildings. I mean, seriously, nobody's in jail. A building that was going to cost $335 million, and now it's going to cost $1.7 billion. Nobody's in jail?
It's not even
Nobody's in jail. So why wouldn't we just give our veterans cards? I pay $1,200, $1,300 a month for this card, $10,000 max, right? So I can blow through $22,000, which we did this year. Why wouldn't we give it to people? And say, go there. You get in front of Steve Laffey. You served in Fallujah. You get in front, you have a star on it. That means you get in front of Steve Laffey who didn't. How can that cost $158 billion? It can't. You tell the Veterans Administration people, run your own, someone go buy these hospitals. Somebody who's a buyout specialist, buy them, operate them, run them. We'd save at least $50 billion. So right now, by the way, right now, unlike the campaign trail that's happening all over this country, we just saved $50 billion. Who would want to argue against doing that? I mean, for example, if you didn't serve in Fallujah, if you just served, nothing wrong with the Coast Guard, you served in the Coast Guard. Wonderful, by the way. God bless, my son wanted to be in the Coast Guard. I wish I had been in the Coast Guard. But you weren't in Fallujah, so maybe you don't get the same deal. Maybe you pay $3 grand, right? Maybe you pay, we can figure it out. Maybe you weren't blown up, half your arm isn't gone. So don't get the same deal as the guy who did. But we can do this. No one will do it because there's no more committee meetings. They don't have another committee meeting. There's no power. There's no coming back home to all of you and saying, look what I'm doing. We're going to get our cost controls over this VA building. We sure are. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of Republicans while I'm here, because the Democrats have nothing going on in this. They're just going to spend more money. Bernie Sanders just announced if 20,000 people came, we ought to be scared by this. But 20,000 people came to hear a guy who said, I'm going to spend $18 trillion more than anybody's ever thought of. And I found a way to raise taxes $6.5 trillion to pay for it. He didn't find 18 trillion, he found 6.5 trillion. So I'm just going to whip out another $12 trillion of debt. Who cares? That's his program. So he solved one problem. Now I want to get back to this defense thing, because I almost never do this. I never bring in articles that I've read. But I just had these on my desk, and I was so incensed. There's an article here. The toughest guy on national defense running for president as a Republican is Marco Rubio. He's be called a war hawk by the Democrats, a neocon by other people. He's always in the news, and his claim to fame is that he sits on committees. Marco Rubio sits on committees. I can sit on a committee, but suppose he's a national defense expert by sitting on a committee. It's by the way, don't get me started on Marco Rubio, but it's insanity. That a guy who looks like a little kid sits on a committee, and now he's like the national defense expert. His how my presidency would deal with China, which we should always refer to as communist China, is nonsense. His ideas range from when the president of China comes here in a couple of weeks, we don't have a state dinner, we just have a working meeting. All right, so we do that. We get our allies to kind of get together and make sure we parade our ships through the South China Sea, and we don't put up with any nonsense. We mention human rights. All these things we can do, by the way. I'm not saying they're bad things to do. We mention human rights when we go visit with them in China, like we always used to before Barack Obama came along. But we always did, by the way. It's a true statement since 1949 or whenever Nixon opened the door to communist China, they would go and announce human rights stuff. I think that's going to work. I want to ask this question because I've been talking about this till I'm almost ready to keel over. In 2001, Communist China entered the World Trade Organization. Our trade deficit with them was like $40 billion a year. Now it's like $50 billion a month. By 2001, they got better trade deals than they got before. The thought was, I never thought this, that they would somehow become a republic like America if we gave them a better deal on trade. And to the tune of, we give them about a 30-some-odd, 40, depending on where they keep their currency, or what they do with tariffs and we do with tariffs, it's like a 35% discount on everything. So I ask you a simple question. From 2001 to today, if I came into your home, smashed a couple of windows, broke your husband's nose, on the way out, slammed the door, would you give me a 35% discount? Because that's the way Communist China treats us. Does anybody read about this? Where their ships buzz our ships in the South China Sea, they cut in front of them? Where their planes buzz our planes? Where they took rocks in the middle of the Spratly Islands and made like 150 acres of land out of it and put offensive weapons missiles on it? Do people even know? It's not even really in the news. None of this is in the news. Their military buildup with our jobs is the sellout of the infrastructure of America. Now, living on the Front Range, you wouldn't know this. Watch my movie. Or just get in the car tomorrow morning and drive for 3.5 months like I've done with my children, and look at America. You will be absolutely shocked. Pull into Youngstown, Ohio. Pull into Cleveland. Pull into places, just randomly pick places that are not Seattle, not Washington, D.C., and not the Front Range. And you'll be like, what the heck is going on here? Why are these buildings vacant? What's the graffiti all over these places? What are these manufacturing warehouses? Didn't GE have a factory over here? Now listen, I'm a trained, so you probably don't know my background. I'm an economic major from Bowdoin College. I'm a Harvard Business School graduate at 24. I helped run a $500 million revenue investment banking firm at the age of 38. We sold it at the very peak of the market. I did okay. I spent a lifetime on this. But somehow we still say the same thing over and over again. That somehow communist China is going to turn to be like us if we just give them enough money. In the meantime, they've developed some of these supersonic missiles that can go past all of our defenses and take out America. They're developing them right now. They're developing their blue water navy right now. They just sent like 3 ships into Alaska. Did anybody read about this? Like people were like, I can't believe this. Believe it. When they launch some aircraft carriers, how are your children and grandchildren's lives going to change? How is their buildup different than what happened in Japan in the 1930s? Because I can't find much of a difference. I don't understand how to speak either language. They're both way over there after you get by San Francisco. And they're building up to do what? To be the world superpower. So do we want to be the world superpower? It looks like not. It looks like Marco Rubio doesn't want to be the world superpower. We need to stop trading with communist China like tomorrow morning. We need to bring these bad jobs back to America. Classical economic theory talks about when you have bananas, and I have Intel chips, and you keep making bananas, and I keep making Intel chips, we both do really well. The best we can do, because we buy a lot of bananas from you. But you're making bananas. You're not stealing our trade secrets. You're not spying on and getting information on 20 million Americans. Some of them have worked for the CIA and the Secret Service and so forth. You're just making bananas. So people have to stop the nonsense and realize that right now communist China is weak, and right now by doing things to them that no one's going to do, we can help the young people riot. We need to help the young people riot, like the people in Iran were rioting in 2009 and Barack Obama did nothing about it. But by and large, we have to realize one other thing that no one talks about. It's not just communist China. It's communist China, North Korea, Syria, Iran, Russia, and Venezuela, at least, who have ganged together and organized together, realizing they can't bring down America by themselves, but together they can. If you notice when North Korea sends up one of those crazy missiles, right? There's a person from Iran standing right there. In Russia. Russia's in Syria today. They are all talking among themselves. A little bit here out of the Ukraine, we'll help them focus on Ukraine, and then we'll build some islands in the Spratly Islands, it's communist China. We'll sell each other stuff, munitions, arms, we'll help each other out, and we will bring down America. Why doesn't somebody understand this? Why doesn't someone run for president to point it out? Let me tell you why they don't point it out. The money from these campaigns, the way it's set up today, by and large, comes from communist China. You say, what are you talking about? No. The large corporations operating over there make so much money, they fund these campaigns. Do you think we're funding the campaigns anymore? Has anybody heard the word super PAC? Except for Donald Trump, that's all it is. That's what's going on. They fund the campaigns. They're exporting their unemployment to America. And we're like, unemployment to America. Why are we doing this? So number one, after we solve the problem of the VA, which is a very easy problem to solve, why wouldn't we have a meeting? Why wouldn't the president look everybody in the eye and say just this? Get a map. Show us where the problem is and tell us what we're going to do about it. We are going to get our allies together. We are going to buttress communist China with India, with Japan, with Australia, and other countries that make it in their interest to understand that if we don't stop them now, 10 years from now, and this is why it's so scary, when they unleash their aircraft carriers, do you know that we have admirals who think it's okay for the Chinese leaders at the top of their military to visit and tour our aircraft carriers? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So a national defense, that's the foreign policy. What is a foreign policy, by the way? People don't even understand what it means. How our government deals consistently with other governments. We've got to make an announcement that these countries are against us. None of them are our friends. Therefore, we wouldn't have a deal with Iran, even our inept Republicans in Congress, not Congressman Buck, who's a friend of mine, but basically inept ways of voting on things and doing it's crazy. So what are some of our other problems? For example, Social Security. So far in the campaign trail, I'll just take the campaign trail because everybody seems to be interested in the campaign that's a year and a half to go, or a year and a quarter to go. So far, you either have people, like I've said before, the Mike Huckabees of the world, who I won't, you know, who are just going to go for, I guess, the older people and say, we're not going to touch Social Security. Two, let's not talk about Social Security. But since it's the largest line item budget, in our budget, I mean, we take in 3.1 trillion, we're spending 3.5, 3.6 trillion. Everybody thinks everything's okay. It's a disaster. So let's solve Social Security. We can't solve Social Security by simply saying people are going to retire a little bit later every month and every year. It's too, I mean, some of these problems in America are too far gone. We've let them go well beyond what is normal. I would love to suggest something normal, like get everybody retired at 67 and I don't want to hear any more about it, right? That's not going to work. It's not going to work. We have too few. We're not having enough kids. Only the Laffey family is having 6 kids. Right? I mean, nobody's having any children. It's bizarre. And so we're going to have too many people retired and too many people working. So what do we have to do? In my opinion, here's what we got to do. We've got to make assets match liabilities. Oh, okay. Because we got like $32 trillion of unfunded liabilities in Social Security alone, depending on which numbers you believe in, the discount rate and so forth. But my friend, Professor Kotlikoff and I talked about this, and it's something like those numbers. So tell everybody tomorrow morning. You know those letters you used to get from the Social Security before they really went broke and didn't send you the letter anymore? You don't get the letters anymore, I don't think, but we used to get a letter. Well, what if they just said to me, I'm 53. Steve, you're 53, you're going to get what we said you're going to get, whatever age, you know, maybe you're going to start getting at 67, not 65. All right. So you got 7 years left, you're going to be putting money into the Social Security, but you're going to own it. It's going to be part of a system, so if you die a year from today, you're going to get that money back, et cetera, et cetera. But once you turn 60, we're going to stop buying annuities for you. We're going to take 10% of that money and buy annuities all the way to your 70. So when you turn 70, now we know what you're going to get. Boom, 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 we're done. The money you put is going to take care of it. Plus you're going to get your other check. So I'm the guy who kind of gets screwed on this because there's not enough years left for me to put in 7 years and get some kind of return on it, right? Then you go to the person who's 20 years old and say, you're just in that system. Maybe you put in for 1 year, whatever. You're in the system. We're going to take X% of your pay. We're going to put it into a worldwide basket of stocks, bonds, and real estate and so forth. And we're going to guarantee you a 0 economic rate of return. That simply means adjusted for inflation. That's what you're going to get. And so we're just going to put it in a black box. We're not going to get the Wall Street investment bankers involved. We're not going to have any commissions. We're just going to stop buying this stuff. Okay? All the way through till you turn 60. A certain part of your income. When you turn 60, you're going to get 10% per year put into annuities. By the time you're 70, we can make it 72 again. Whatever, just be a rough on the years. So you're going to get whatever you get. That way, along the way, you get married, you get divorced, you and your wife split, half of yours, half of his, go separate ways, you die before you're 60, you get to keep the money. It's actually yours. You get to keep it, give it to your heirs and so forth. But once you turn 60, you're in that program. We buy these annuities for you. Now, and I can go through some other stuff, we're left with one problem. Okay, by the way, the people who are 65 are getting what they get and all this kind of stuff, right? So now we have a problem where assets do match liabilities, right? So you're in with the 20-year-olds are in with the 20-year-olds. 40 years from now, it's hard to believe. There's never been a period like it in American history, not the Great Depression, not 2001, to whatever. There's never a period where that wouldn't be better than nothing that you get on Social Security. There'd be a lot more money for people, number one. Number two, along the way, you own it in a sense. So you get to take it out in a sense when you die or something happens to you. But once you get to be 60, there it is. So now, we don't have that 30 trillion. When I say trillion, does anybody know what a trillion means, by the way? When I say a trillion, it's so hard to say a trillion because, look at this audience, we're kind of the billion people, right? Reagan ran some $1 billion, $200 billion deficits, people went crazy, right? Billion. Now we're saying trillion, we're whipping it around like it's $50. If you lost, it's in my movie, but if you were alive when Jesus Christ came down as a baby, and you had a company and you lost $1 million a day, every single day, as of today, you would not have lost $1 trillion. $1 million a day would take to like 2730. That's $1 trillion. So someone has to solve one of these problems. In other words, that's a problem. We just solved it. We can argue over the one thing that's left. What do we do about the working class poor who never make enough money? They get to be 60 to have any kind of real retirement. That's a real problem. But now we've segregated the problem. We have a problem. We know specifically what it is. Just like Medicare Part D, by the way. We knew we had a problem for older people and prescription drugs. And what did we do? By the way, what did the conservatives do? What did Paul Ryan do? What did Rick Santorum do? What did they all do? They voted for a program that put $13 trillion more of unfunded liability on the backs of my children. Right? Was there really any difference between that and Obamacare? No. I mean, seriously, it's all unfunded mandates that go out in the trillions of dollars that can't be paid back, that are bankrupting America. So there's Social Security, solved, boom, done. Student loans. I mean, I'll solve another problem for you. I mean, and by the way, I don't know why people would, if we could get people in a room, where would people be to say, well, we can't do this? I mean, there'd be some guys, I've been in meetings where people are screaming. I've been in meetings with 1,500 people threatening to kill their dogs when I was the mayor. We were bankrupt, and people, doing crazy things, watching my home. But, really, there's always these crazy people doing stuff. But is America, I'll ask you the question, because I'd like to know the answer. Is America at the point where we can't do something like that? Or do people think we're really not near the end? Do people really think that this great republic has more than 5 years left before the whole thing blows up? Do you think it's going to go on like this? 18 trillion, 20 trillion? Does anybody really? I think nobody thinks that. But I think most people can't deal with it. They got their blinders on. They got a job. You guys are going to go to work tomorrow, whatever you're doing, right? You're going to do your jewelry, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. You're going to go to work and you're going to have to forget what I said. I, unfortunately, am not going to forget what I said. I, unfortunately, am going to be tortured tonight about thinking about it, about the implications for my children. God has it on my heart and will not let it go, which is why I'm here again tonight. Because I have failed to convince people in my speeches around the world, around the United States of America, not really the world, in the movie that I made, in the book that I wrote, in my candidacy, is that this is actually going to happen. I used to say 10, 12 years when I was running for the U.S. Senate in Rhode Island. Now I say under 5 years, because it's absolutely going to happen. And here's what's going to happen. Let me get to that 1 second, because I'll tell you what's going to happen in 1 second. Student debt payback lags. Student debt is $1.2 trillion.
I thought banks were taking care of it.
No, if the federal government gets so involved in student loans that now you have schools. I don't know, I can't read what it says here anymore, but let me just paraphrase what it says in this article. There are schools, like lots of them, where 40% of the students aren't paying any of their student loans back. It's like 17% of these students are in arrears. If home loans or auto loans were 17% in arrears, the world would flip upside down. In 2008, 2009, I don't have it in front of me, but auto loans went to like 7% in arrears. And people were flipping out. Like home loan, it's 17%. So you ask yourself the other question. What's happened to the morals of our country? Where people don't have any intention of paying back the money they get. What's happened to the colleges that don't teach things that people can get jobs? What's happened to the parents that keep sending their kids to the colleges that they can't get jobs? I know. I went to Bowdoin College. I'm one of those kids. I'm mentioning it. I'm 30 years old. I'm the poor kid who I went to a knees blind elite school called Bowdoin College, Wellesley College, Bowdoin College, Amherst, so forth. I went there, I was poor, they accepted me knees blind. I took out these student loans a little bit. I was going to pay them back. I was like, my gosh, I get to go. I'm the only Laffey to ever go to college until my kids went. My gosh, I get to go to college. I took it so seriously. I sent back more checks than I owed when I got out. I paid them up 10 years early. By the grace of God I could, but I was always going to do that. Who's not doing it? People aren't doing it. So we got this other problem going on in this country. It's like, do people, I'm thinking sometimes, maybe they do know and just don't care. But when we have this financial collapse, and I hate to say when and which, but how otherwise do it? Unless somebody ran for president. I mean, wouldn't you like the debate tomorrow night to go like this? I would. I mean, maybe you would. 16 candidates come in, or it's 10, I guess they got down 10 or 11. They come in, and the announcer says, we're not going to do things normal. I know you thought we were going to have like 50 questions on different topics. Now I was going to bust your chops about this and your chops about that. You don't get along with people, 10 crews, whatever they did last time, right? And you say not bad things about women, Mr. Trump. We're not going to do that. All we're bringing in are giant chalkboards. And we're going to have you guys take 10 minutes. We're going to take a large commercial break. On the bottom, we're going to show ads. You guys go to the blackboards and balance the United States budget. We'd like to get at least $500 billion of cuts, and where you might get $400 billion of revenue increases. We'll be back. I think people would fall off the back of their chairs. I think people running for president, they wouldn't be able to write it down. Now, if you go to stevelaffey.com, which is my website, I walk around with this. I walk around with like $800 billion of cost savings and revenue enhancements in my pocket, on a piece of paper. I was with this wonderful guy a year ago, Vote to Reduce Debt. I was speaking around the country with this guy, Vote to Reduce Debt. Ken Davis, great guy, 89 years old, walked up and said, the debt's going to kill our country. So we were having breakfast with Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is very good, by the way, extremely nice guy, very smart guy. Love to see him on the Supreme Court. And they kept trying to ask him about what he was going to do about the deficit. He kept talking about economic growth, right? That's always the thing, let's talk about economic growth. Paul Ryan's budget has 4% economic growth every single year for 10 years. How fast do you think the United States economy has grown on average over the last 30 years? 3.1. Has there been recessions over those years? Yeah. Are there any recessions in Paul Ryan's budget? There are none. 10 more years, it'll be 16 straight years without a recession. So I can go through this, you can go look at it online. But people should have this if they're running for president. They should actually have it and pass it out and say, there's going to be a lot of pain about, this is what we have to do to save the country. And I say save the country. What's missing from the whole dialogue is the urgency. And I think they don't want you to know this, some simple facts. Let me give it to you. We've got $18 trillion in the national debt. It's really a lot more than that, but we'll just talk about those numbers. And it's really not that much because we borrow among each other in different government entities, so it's really like 15. But it's scheduled under the Republican budget, the Democratic budget, anybody talking, to go to past $20 trillion. So, do you remember 2008, 2009, 2010, or is that just like way so far that you can't imagine that ever happening again? But in those years, not our country, because we're the world's reserve currency, right? So when people get scared, they keep coming to American treasuries, at least for now. But other countries that had problems, what happened, and what always happens to people who have too much debt? They go broke. And what happens to the rates they have to pay? They go way up. So, look at a graph of France, look at a graph of Portugal, look at a graph of Spain, look at a graph of Greece, not now, but back in 08, 09. The debt levels of the countries were so high that until they started printing money like they did, it wasn't like the 10-year bond in that country yielded 2, and then people said, oh, it's 2 3/4 a year later. What's really going on? We got a problem. A year later, it's like 3 1/4. No, it's like 2 3 12. Because investors looked at it and said, we got to get the heck out. They've sold and they get out. How does that not happen to America within the next 5 years? I just asked the question. How does it not happen? I mean, at some point, don't we all know we're heading over this cliff? And don't we just keep heading over the cliff? It's not like, it's not 1979 where things were pretty bad, right? Things were pretty bad. I was a teenager. They were pretty bad. But no one said, we're going to lose the country. My friends, who I went to business school with, who run companies, who's still on the treadmill, running stuff and building and whatever, there's not one of them who doesn't think it's like pretty much over. So just to give you the numbers, again from the budget, which would be good that they were on TV one time. I'd love to turn on Fox News at 6 o'clock at night and see Brett, or 4 o'clock, whatever he comes on, Brett, whatever his name is. Beard. I'd love to see him not talk about Hillary Clinton's emails at the beginning, but to tell people just this. We've got this national debt. We're borrowing because the Fed has kept rates unusually low. We benefited from the weakness of other countries. The dollar has gotten stronger. Yet, our average borrowing cost over the last 30 years has been 6%. So at some point, what if can we go back to normal? Or can we never go back to normal? Like, where do we live in the economic cycle? We have to go back to normal. I mean, things go back to normal. You have sales in your company. Whatever you do, right? And you have a great month, a bad month, but things go back to normal. How do we even go back to 5? Just to give you some numbers. Right now, the interest on national debt is I'll make it up, it's $250 billion. It's roughly that. $250 billion. You got $3.1 trillion coming in. You still run deficits. As you look at it, you say, oh, it's not so bad. What happens if we borrow at $20 trillion just to make the numbers even at 5%. $1 trillion in interest costs. That's $750 billion we don't have right now. Which economic growth model gets us out of that problem? None! Nothing gets out of this problem. So we've got a problem. And we don't have elected officials, maybe because we don't have Americans who want to solve these problems. So what's going to happen when this, you know what, hits the fan? Are we going to have a leader like Barack Obama? Are we going to have a leader like someone on the right who wants to take even more power from us? This becomes the problem. When people say, oh, we'll give that guy even more power. Believe me, they're going to be looking at 401k plans and IRAs and all this kind of stuff because that's where the money is. But there's no way now out of the problem unless we did some drastic things now, like balance Social Security's assets and liabilities. Do the same thing with Medicare and Medicaid. There's things that have to be done. You know, and by the way, I'll pull out one last article here. And this is what really frustrates me. I have nothing against Jeb Bush. He's probably a great guy. And someone did a lot of work on his article about what to do with the tax system, right? Someone really kind of scoped it out and said, hey, we'll make it look like Reagan. We'll have 3 rates. One will be 28, be like Reagan. They kind of remember that, right? We'll talk about deductions, make them up to 3% of the gross income. We won't tell everybody what the deductions are because we put them out there. The ones we're taking away from you. We'll simplify the tax code, and people. And by the way, I saw him on TV the day he did it. I saw him on CNBC. I saw him on MSNBC. I think it was several channels that morning, and he did a pretty good job explaining it. And the people who heard it, whether it was financial people, whatever, like, wow, like this could really get Jeb Bush going again. But then you have to step back and say, does any of this ever get done? And we have to know in our hearts that when or if someone like Jeb Bush gets elected to be president, none of it gets done. The lobbyists are way too strong. He doesn't really want to do it. I mean, someone who really wants to do it, we've been talking about this forever, which makes you realize that there really is only one answer. We have to get rid of the tax code. There is no other answer to this. The only answer really is a fair tax. It can't be because we'll never get, we'll talk about this. He'll run on it. You'll like it. It'll be, let's say Jeb takes off. It'll be July, and it's like, wow, we're actually going to do this. But we don't do it. George Bush's brother ran on vouchers. Does anybody remember? Vouchers. You were excited about vouchers. You were going to get a check for your kid to go over here. We ended up with no child left behind. You wake up every day, and our test scores for 30 years of going like this, and like this, and like this, and like this, and no child left behind became the race to the top. Then they had this Common Core thing. If we had just got the darn vouchers, we'd be better off, but we never got them, and we're not going to get them. That's the ultimate problem. So what do the people, I mean, if I had a new party, what would it be about? What do people really agree upon? People in America, if you see them on the streets, what do they agree upon? They want to balance the damn budget. And I think if there was explained, I believe this one thing. Maybe if I stop believing it, I'll never show up to speak again. You'll never see me again. I'll just go back and make money. I think if it was fair, people would suck it up and do it. That the sugar producers weren't screwing us down there in Florida, right? And getting a better deal than you, they would do. The tax code really didn't exist, the 70,000 pages that nobody can read, right? By the way, on a campaign trail, not the last one, but in 06, when I was the mayor, I used to bring it around with me. First of all, I had to buy the small print thing you couldn't even read without glasses because you couldn't carry. You can't carry the regular one unless you're Schwarzenegger, right? In his prime, you can't carry it. So you stop reading it to people, and people can't believe. People can't believe. Go to SteveLaffey.com. I do a little show on the farm price support. I stopped reading about milk. I happen to have some cows, but I didn't have many cows. But I'm reading about milk. I don't understand. I have no idea. I'm a fairly, I'm not trying to sound like Donald Trump, I'm a fairly smart guy, right? I think I am. I can't understand a word of what they're talking about. So we have to, so people who want to balance the budget, to get rid of the tax system. Term limits. Everybody knows it corrupts people. Everybody knows it. Now there's always someone in the press says, no, the guy gets elected, he should keep getting elected, he does a good job, he should decide about it. What is really conservative, by the way? Conservative is what works. Over a long period of time, what is conservative? It's what works for people, to have more people and live in peace. So, strong national defense works. right? So what works? And what we've been doing doesn't work anymore. And having people in office over 2 terms simply doesn't work. Simply doesn't work. I remember being the mayor of little old Cranston, Rhode Island, city of about the size, I guess, but strong, very strong mayor's charter. And it had been bankrupted. We took it back and so forth. But I had a little list. I had a list. It was a yellow, anybody who knows me well knows I walk around with these yellow notepads. And I had a little checklist, 5 things I'd written down before. We had lots, we had the worst bond rating in America, lowest in the United States of America. I'm not leaving until it's investment grade. It's investment grade. We had $12 million negative. I'm not leaving until we have a large surplus. We had $20 million in that. But fund these out, whatever it was. I told my inner circle, the greatest people you ever meet in your life. I'm done. I'm not running for mayor anymore. I'm done. I did what I told people I would do this. It's all done. There's check marks. We're done. I'm going to build a police station, the whole bit. And people went crazy. No, Steve, mayor, you're going to stay longer. I mean, you know, people will know you better than, and you'll be the governor. Oh, I mean, at least one more term. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. It just becomes inherent in little old Cranston. Imagine what's like in Congress and the Senate, right? It's unbelievable, the pressure, the people that come around. You have to find people who really don't want to do it, quite frankly, who really don't want to do it. And so there's things that we can't agree upon. That's what we need to gravitate around. You do this. And by the way, not just term limits. If you work for a U.S. Senator, if you work for a congressman, and you are a congressman or senator, you can never be a lobbyist again. You can never lobby for anybody. You get your butt back to Colorado or Washington State, and we never want to see you again. Thanks so much for your help. People would agree with that. We don't do it. By the way, some Princeton professors came up with this study. It's very sad to say. I don't know if you saw this. It was a very interesting study about 2 months ago. And you can kick me off whatever you want. I'm sorry. But the study basically said this. If the American people want it, there's almost no chance of it happening. If the political elite lobbyists want it, there's a 30% chance of it happening. That's our system. I believe it's going to have to be blown up. I think it's much worse than you guys that we're talking about. Much worse than on TV. And it's going to get much worse, much quicker over the next several years. I only wish I could have more fingers to put in the dice to stop it. Go ahead. And I can leave. I can just leave.
A couple questions for me, really.
Well,
Yes, go ahead.
they can go to the states.
Yes.
Article 5.
Article 5 is great.
You support it?
Of course. Article 5 is wonderful. It's right. The things are in the Constitution. People always try to, people go on shows and say, well, it's not really there. What are you talking about? Article 5, the states can call a convention, and they should. And we should. The real problem is everybody look out the window. They're the problem. Like, how many people are coming to these events? What are people thinking? What are they really going to do? Do they think it's really going to be this way? It's nice to have slogans. And listen, make America great. I want to make America great again. But people have to almost get scared. The only time I was ever elected was in a city that people were out of their minds scared. That the Providence Journal, the Denver Post of the paper, the statewide paper, put about the city, the second largest city, it was going to bring down the whole state. And they put red lines, Cranston financial crisis on every article. Cranston West basketball team wins game. Cranston financial crisis. Not really there, but on every article, they put it on there. And people were like, oh my gosh, can I get a mortgage? What happens if we default on our debt? And they went to the debates and they listened. And I had a message that was very simple. Nobody will like anything I'm going to do. But I didn't come all the way back home to live in Detroit. Elect me and we'll fix it, and at the end, it'll be okay. And I'll tell you one last part about it. I was running for re-election and the city was fixed. And I really thought you could run to prove that you did a good job and that'd be okay. I ran one more time and I did. I ran for 2 times. It's a day before the election. My campaign manager, who was my high school economics teacher who retired to work in my campaign, unbelievable guy, greatest guy I ever met. He's up ahead with a clipboard. He says, Mayor, this lady wants to talk to you. I come running down the street. I put my head into the window. The lady puts the window down. And I said, hello. It's on Albert Avenue. And she says, I hate you. And I said, yeah, I've heard that before. And she goes, oh, I'm going to vote for it. It had to be done. I just didn't like it. And I won with 65% of the vote in a state that's the most liberal, democratic state, because people were so scared and when it first happened that they were going to lose everything. America's coming to those days. And we better have people willing to put freedom back in rather than statism, because we're going to be at the precipice of losing this country in a very short order. Anyway, thank you for your time. And we'll take it. Colorado, I'll tell the crossing guards. All right, so if you have me the story. So imagine you come back to a city, and it's totally broken, and you show up and you haven't lived there for 20 years. That was me. 18 years I effectively left Cranston, Rhode Island. I felt like I owed the city a debt. It really enraged me. I love Cranston, Rhode Island. It breaks my heart that I'm not there some days. I was 38 years old. I show back up, and the city is totally out of control, double broke. So I show up, and I analyze the budget. I'm a Harvard MBA guy, right? So I analyze the budget. I see $80,000 in unemployment insurance in the police department. I'm like, $26 million budget. That's okay. Anyway, I get to be mayor. I win the race. I'm now mayor-elect. The phone's ringing off the hook, and it goes something like this. Mayor, Steve, Mayor. My wife's been trying to be a crossing guard for over 10 years. Can you see what you can do about it? She's been passed up by a Larry and traffic candy, the two previous mayors. I said, yeah, I don't know. Okay, great. I said, look at it. Phone keeps, I like my wife to be a crossing guard. I helped you out. I held those street corners. And I'm like, okay, great. So finally I know there's something radically wrong that I haven't picked up on. I go over to City Hall and I find this crossing guard contract. And I stop running the numbers on it. The crossing guards make $129 an hour. The crossing guards are represented by International Brotherhood Union, which is in Providence, Rhode Island, which is a very corrupt union. That's, people going to jail, a bunch of people, you know what I'm saying, right? They're represented by them. Not only do they have you can't lay them off contract, you can't move them from this corner to that corner, even though the school over here closed 40 years ago. So I'm sitting around at a local breakfast shop, Spoonham's Restaurant, wonderful place, and I'm looking out the window and I notice it's 7:30, there's the crossing guard. It's 8 o'clock, there's the crossing guard. There's no students, nobody's crossed. Well, over the years, this crossing guard place has always been there. The school went for it to be younger kids, 1st through 3rd, rather than 5th and 6th when I went to Edmond Highlands. And nobody's letting their kids walk that far anymore. It just isn't happening, but they're still there. So anyway, I went to the union, and I said, listen, we're totally broke. We got to change this. Listen, you guys get free health insurance for your entire family. You get $45 in cash. You get unemployment in the summer, which is because they're in the police department. They all collected $80,000 was all 39 crossing guards collecting $2,100 every summer. Every summer, brother. Went back to the year before. I'm like, there's $80,000. So it adds up to $900-some-odd-thousand for 30-some-odd crossing guards. It's an hour a day, 108. They have sick days. They have a pension plan. The whole thing's crazy. So income. By the way, a man named Ronnie Coyer, who I think was banned from working in any of this political stuff under the Clinton administration. So kind of a rough character, right? He came in to meet with me, and I said to him, can I get you a cup of coffee? So I turned my back, get you a cup of coffee. The lawyers are over here. He goes, no, Mayor, we just came in here to set you straight on a couple of things. Now that's Rhode Island politics.
Yeah.
So I can't really tell you what I said because it's being taped and because there's a lot of ladies in the audience, but it was a very short meeting, like 30 seconds. I said, let me set you, blah, 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 straight. We're broke, blah, blah, blah. This one, by the way, the crossing guard case, I said this 100 times, but Ronald Reagan had the air traffic controllers. In Rhode Island, to this very day, if you call 401, blah, 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 just randomly call on your way out of here, and ask if they ever heard of Steve Laffey, and they say, oh, yeah, I think, and say, you ever hear of the Cranston Crossing Guards? If they've lived there, they will know the Cranston Crossing Guards. It became a cause célèbre, and the news couldn't find anybody against me. You know what? Watch the evening news tonight, because I was like, oh, I like that guy, Steve Laffey. I hate that guy, Steve Laffey. Whatever it is, right? I like them, the new water system in the dams. I hate the dams, you know, that kind of thing. They couldn't find anybody. They're walking around. One person, I can't find anybody against you. So it went on for like years. We lost there was a union, pro-union judge. He called me a union buster, never read the case, thank God. He threw it out and we lost. And we kept losing. But eventually we won. We fired these crossing guards, and for the state of Rhode Island, we proved that a city charter was much more important than it could break the union contract. And we did. And the state Supreme Court couldn't overrule it. But I was on CNN, I was on work. This thing became unbelievable. By the way, I'll tell you, I had to take no one believed me, right? So I hired a private detective. And under the charter, I couldn't do that. So I hired a lawyer who hired a private detective. And a lawyer, and I also had these people who slept on the job. And I didn't know that around here they street sweep, right? We pick up all the little dirt. We had a street sweeper going on at night, and we had people going on at day. So it's like July or June, and people are like, hey, Mayor, my street's windy. I know the dirt's blowing all over the place. I'm like, I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm not an expert in finance. I'm not an expert in cleaning up the streets, right? So I go back and the union head, who's the head of the department, says, Mayor, this takes till September, blah, 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 blah. We got the trucks out. So I go back and say, how many miles of roads do we have in Cranston? And I found it's 324. I do the net math, 4 miles an hour, it rains half the time. Whatever it was, they should have been done. So I put video cameras in the Department of Public Works. And I videotaped the crossing guards, not crossing kids, not showing up on time. Half an hour, they can't show up on time. They can't show up. Had it all videotaped. Turns out that the guys who were supposedly at night street sweeping was one guy, it looks like this. The videotape, the guy comes in, grabs a pillow, goes to sleep. Only gets up to go to the bathroom and turn over. That's it. 8 hours. Gone. He's gone. People wake him up in the morning. The other two guys take a city car that they don't have keys for. They do though. And that's what they have. They go to what we call a hot dog place. They go to a hot dog place, they eat wieners, they go to an all-night Dunkin' Donuts, they suck down donuts, and I have them being followed, by the way. I have videotapes of them being followed. And the guy finally says, Babe, you may lose this, but at the very end of the night, you know, like in a movie, you know where there's cones, construction cones, and you know you kind of want to knock them over? These guys in a city truck knock them over. Boop, 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 all the thing. I mean, I've seen it. So I videotaped everything, and I unleashed the whole press conference on the street sleepers instead of the street sweepers. We're the crossing guards, not crossing kids. So that's one of the reasons I won re-election. But yeah, the crossing guards finally get fired. But in the history of mankind, I would go to even in Rhode Island, they would give out a crossing guard award. And so just to make sure everybody knew what was going on, I'd go to see this, a 12-year-old kid who wins the Southern New England Crossing Guard Award. A 12-year-old kid. And I'd be giving her a Cranston citation, and the news would always come, because wherever I went, the news would come, and they come, and they say, Mayor, aren't you making, I said, oh no, I'd love to be this 12-year-old kid. Oh, well, you're right, they are volunteers in this city. They don't have crossing guards that make 120. Oh, you're right, it can be done. Because, anyway, they try to, anyway, I can go all day with the crossing guards. But the crossing guards were, boy, to think that actually existed was quite the story. Anyway, I'm sorry you want so long. But it's great to be, it's really great to be with you all here tonight. We do have time. I've got to find a better way to help the country myself. We all do. I think if I leave you with one thing, it is just too darn serious for my children and your children to be even talking about normal things. And we are. And we're going to, in the news media, we'll talk about normal things tomorrow. It's really sad. We're in deep, deep, deep trouble as a country. And we've got to get out of this rut before it's over. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just a comment. We all, I think, in this room believe in prayer. And I know prayer was everything to my husband. But I'm asking everybody here to pray for Steve Dunn. And I mean pray with vigilance.
My daughter has stage 4, stage 4 cancer, neuroblastoma, and Congressman Rupp was gracious enough to come. We've become good friends since our race. And the way it should be, by the way. When good people run and have differences and run, they become friends. It was sort of an outset of the day. But yes, you can pray for my daughter, Sarah Grace. I really appreciate it. We love her dearly. She just came back from her 5th chemo, and it's really a rough situation. So, she's 18 years old. She was about to graduate college at 19. I didn't get the homeschooling, but I will next time. Anyway, she's homeschooled. Thank you so much. I make a lot of mistakes. I spent 30 years on these topics. I know them cold. I know where the budget is. And right now, we don't have people literally running who know what they're going to do and are willing to let you know. It's not going to be enough. If President Skinner's coming, I hope you stop them and say, I need $500 billion of cost savings right now. Do you have it in your pocket? Because we need $500 billion of cost savings like tomorrow morning. And we're not getting it from Republicans. How did the Republican Party take control of both houses and not whip on the president's desk every day? All they got to do, if John Boehner watches this, all you got to do is go to Senator Coburns' old report, $200 billion of wasteful spending, puts up every year, the great senator from Oklahoma who had to retire, and just take $1 billion every day and whip it on his desk. $1 billion ridiculous spending item. Just whip it on his desk, put out a press release, do it every 3 hours. It's 1,000 billion to make a trillion. We've got a lot of ways to go. But no one will do it. I mean, no one will do it. Like, it'd be easy, it'd be great publicity. Like, just do it. You know, the bicycle ramps they build, I mean, you can all day about the stuff that's total waste. Anyway, I was like,
Well, we have some door prizes.